Strange Adventures issue 1. Tom King writing with Mitch Gerrits and Doc Shaner on the art. Obviously, this has been highly anticipated because Mr. Miracle was such a big deal. This is kind of the spiritual follow-up, focusing on Adam Strange. And honestly, Gerrits' art is so distinct that I feel like I was reading Mr. Miracle. See, when I first, the first page, I was like, wait a minute, this just looks like Mr. Miracle. This is jarring.
It shares similar tone and themes.
Yes.
So remind me, was Gerrits in the military?
I don't know.
Or was it just King that was an analyst?
King was in the CIA, but I mean...
Yeah.
I've never heard of Gerrits being in the military.
For whatever reason, I thought that maybe he served.
I'm going to go on a limb and say I don't think so, because I know what he's spoken before in the past is like, he spent like 4 or 5 years, when he was trying to break into comics,
right?
With like his then girlfriend, now wife, like paying for his rent, like not even like her, like his half, like they were living together when they were living separately. Like she was paying like all of his rent just so he could work on comics.
Okay, because I could have sworn in that I thought that was going to add a different layer to this about Adam Strange's experience coming back from Rand.
Well, let me explain.
But I don't know.
Let me explain what the premise of the book is before we dive in. So this is kind of like Mr. Miracle. It's set kind of after a lot of Adam Strange's, adventures, to forgive the pun. And he's written a book about his time during the war in Ran. And, the book kind of keeps coming back to him signing copies at bookstores, and he's doing interviews and things like that. And they are split up because whenever we flash back to the war in Ran, we switch to Doc Shaner, we switch to the pulpier art. And when we do the stuff on Earth, we have the Mitch Gerrits kind of more, grittier kind of...
It's so clever because Shaner is so often associated with Silver Age content, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And using him as the this is the time gone by essentially, is genius. But then to kind of throw that into the, we're actually using this for the quite horrific war stuff, gives it this extra distinction.
It gives it a sheen where, at least here in this country, there's this idea of war being like war that you see in a movie, and there's a disconnect of how graphic and ugly and traumatizing it really is. And I mean, this goes all the way back to World War One, and even probably before that. It's just not as well documented. So the fact you have Shaner doing these very clean lines, very idealized, depictions of it that look straight out of a Silver Age comic, right?
I would not be surprised if at some point in the book we see Gerrits taking on doing the flashback, just to show the contrast,
to show the reality, right? Yeah. And
I can see that. Yeah. So the main gist of the book though is that he's accused of essentially doing something awful, some sort of war crime, during the war. Whatever he did to actually win was really, inhumane or whatever, and he's accused of this. And then the person that accuses him of this, angrily at one of the book signs, shows up dead, which looks like a laser beam to the head, which I actually thought that was really graphic. I mean, see when this come up on the TV and the news, I was like, whoa, his head exploded.
The news would never show something like that.
Because you say that, I don't think there are a million. I don't think we're that far away from them going, well, we'll put the graphic warning first and then we'll show it.
Yeah, because they say, there's a warning for graphic content, but it's straight up just like a head missing. I'm like, I feel like, at least right now in the world, they wouldn't show that in the news.
Like I say, we're not that far off. When mainstream public broadcasters have showed, like beheadings in the news and actually shown it, I don't think we're that far away from, this is a little bit more extreme in terms of the splatterness of it, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I can buy it.
Yeah. So we see time where they're on Rand together. Him during these fights, we see like the morning talk show hosts discussing his new book, and they're going to have him on to talk. But of course, he ends up have been accused of this from this guy. We see him fighting in the war against the what was the name of the alien race?
The Pikit.
The Pikit, there you go.
Which I looked up, but I don't know if that's that's new, or if that's something that's been established. Adam Strange has a very weird history when it comes to comics because for the longest time he didn't have a solo series. Like he was in backups and and mysteries in space and all these other books. So it's very hard, at least it was hard for me this morning to try to find this stuff.
I didn't know if they were new or not. I was reading it as Pict.
Okay.
For the essential reason, the Picts were like a Celtic sort of.
Yeah, well, they
race
were. What's the word? When you have people that are there, that are fighting back, not rebels, because rebels that's a political term, but it's the people that are already there that are fighting occupation.
Yeah, they were like the original inhabitants.
Yeah, and they fought the Picts fought the Romans.
Yes, exactly.
During that era. Yeah.
So that's why I assumed
it could be
because it gave me this idea of, okay, the Picts aren't actually necessarily the bad guys that we're assuming they're being painted to be.
Right, and we have this very nuanced idea of war now in this day and age, where it's not good guys versus bad guys. It's all very complex, and King knows this. So the fact that Shaner's telling the story in the past, where we're just supposed to believe Rand's side of it, that these are an invading force.
Yeah, which again, that's why I was reading it as Pict. I was getting that that illusion there.
Yeah. No, what I think is really interesting is you get these, because the first stuff you see in the battle on Ran is, again, really pulpy, really heroic looking, and then it's after that you get to have this guy accusing him of something. Although I did pop a little bit for the Pict tank that transformed into essentially a transformer. He actually stood up. I'm into that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Because we don't all we really see is we see him get called away at one point, to go and help his family, because Alana's in trouble or whatever. So he's like, no, I need to go. I have to leave this fight. So we don't really get a sense of what he did in this first issue. If indeed he did do something that there's merit to this, although it feels like it is, because I feel like a lot of this, what it was getting at is this idea of it was making me think of Vietnam in a lot of ways, where when soldiers from Vietnam came back, they instead of being treated like war heroes, they were treated like they'd done something wrong, like they had been committing atrocities, and they were really questioned. And I was getting lots of vibes of that in this. And even Adam Strange, I feel like he goes to this gala, he speaks, he gets a medal. And there's a great moment outside where Alana's talking about, it's all blown up all over the news sites and they all think you're great. And he's got the medal in his little box, and instead of actually paying attention to it, he just starts doing pew pew noises. And I thought,
so one of the guys that follows me, because I had asked which cover people got, and someone responded to me, and I'd have to look through my Twitter. But they said that Garrett's is at the shop they were at, and he was winging koosh balls at people, yelling pew pew. If you didn't pick up his cover. And I was like, that sounds like a threat, but I feel like I missed out. So yeah, I love that pew pew is going to become a thing out of this now.
Yeah, again,
is that the new Dark Side is?
It may be because the coloring, is very much like Mr. Miracle when it's the Garrett's art, which makes a lot of sense. But because of that, there's a big contrast between that and the Shaner stuff, which is so clean. Do
they do their own colors? I know Gerard's has done before, and Shayna sometimes does. Just in the credits, I don't see any separate colors, so they must be just doing their own colors.
Yeah, that makes sense. And given they're only doing half an issue each, I imagine that they have got time to do it then, because of that. We see, it is very pulpy. He's fighting a giant monster. And I think this idea of accusing him of these war crimes, when what we're seeing in the images and what we're seeing in the panels is such classic sci-fi pulp adventure, like, it almost doesn't click in our brain that he could have done something awful in this scenario. And I think part of the charm of this book might be, over the course of the story, revealing where the grey area comes in. Like, what did he choose to do that could be taken as something, because obviously they're adamant that all of it's lies. He goes on TV and says, no, this is a lie, I never did this, this isn't something. Well,
I want to know is how this guy would have gotten information, because he's there for a book signing and it's basically his memoirs, right?
Yeah.
So, but he says, I know what you did to those people, to the Picts or the Pikets.
I think what gets me is, he is so adamant that, like, say, he goes on TV, he goes to Batman, it's like, hey, look, you investigate the shit out of me, I've got nothing to hide.
Yeah, I like that scene.
So adamant. that it makes me go, there is something that he's done that he doesn't even realize was something that was wrong in the time, I think.
Yeah, no, that's what I think too. There's going to be something that he does then feel bad about later, but it's not something that's occurred to him as of yet, or something that he's not even aware he did. Maybe some choice he made had a negative effect that he didn't realize at the time. Because that's kind of the big thing, is that he wants Batman to investigate him, and Batman says, no, I'm too close, no one would believe me, it has to be someone who's impartial, which leads to the ending, which is Mr. Terrific showing up to investigate on instead of Batman, to investigate Adam on his behalf. So that stuff is really cool, and I like the debating as well from the TV interviewers, right, where one of them was like really against him and says, no, he denied everything, what are you talking about? And the other one's like, no, he didn't deny specific things, he just said it's all lies. It's like, well, that's still denying it. And they have this debate, and it was kind of like almost really bugging me, because it was really, really realistic in a really annoying way, where people who debate these things, I'm like, why are you having this argument? This is not an argument. Like, this is like, one of you is just trying your hardest to make this sound like it's something it's not, and it's frustrating. I landed on the page here actually. There's a page where the top panel is Alana kind of tearing up, in the talk, because we keep hearing about his daughter, right? And they keep bringing up his daughter as if, well, implying that, hey, they lost his daughter. He clearly, this war meant something to him, and he lost a lot in this war. He lost his daughter, right? Although I don't think they ever quite phrase it like that, but it's heavily implied.
Something's happened to her, and we don't know if she's dead or was captured.
And it keeps teasing her. It keeps teasing Alina right throughout the book. And this page here that I'm looking at, and I really love the art here, is that the top panel is Alana saying, "What about Alina?" when they're talking about leaving the planet, right? They're evacuating, and the bottom two panels on this just 3-panel layout is actually on Earth in present day, and it's Alana on a phone, but she's in the reflection of the jetpack. Yep. I love it. I love those panels.
Yeah, and that's why she's saying that you can't comprehend what he did,
right?
And that, the sacrifice he made, and in contrast with that, talking about his daughter at the top of the page.
Right.
It really gives that impression that that something happened to her.
Yeah, and then we finally.
There's also blood spatter on the picture of the family.
Yeah.
And on the jetpack.
And we finally
when he's talking about Alina.
And we finally get to meet the daughter as well. We finally get to meet Alina. And he hugs her and it's like, oh, we have to go, and I know you're scared and whatever. And that's right before the scene with Batman, where he's like, hey, Batman, take my gun, analyze it for stuff, and to tell him I didn't do this, I didn't kill this guy. So it's really exciting seeing exactly how that is. And one of my favorite touches in the art, and I'm not sure if it actually is. I think it is. I think Gerard's actually drew Adam in a Shaner panel. It's when he's like beaming back to Earth, and I think the whole idea is that he's about to be on Earth, and since the Gerard's art is the Earth art, it's like he's becoming the Gerard's art in front of them as he beams out.
I think they actually both drew him, and they're overlaid with a lot of opacity.
I can see that.
Yeah, either way, but yeah, that is the point.
Yeah,
is he's Zeta beaming, right? Which then I had to remember that, because I'm only used to the Zeta beam in like post-crisis history, but in the pre-crisis era, it was like a timed thing.
Yeah, it would, like every X amount of hours, it would zap him.
Right, and then it would pull him back. Whereas later it just became a transportational beam. Here, come and go as he pleases.
I think one of the other things we have to address here with the whole Silver Age pulpy Shaner art for the stuff on Ran is that I was also getting the impression that the reason why it looks so idealistic is because this is the version that's in his book and his memoirs. The way he's written it is what it looks. This is what it sounds like and feels like.
Yeah. So we maybe can't trust everything.
Right, and even the dialogue that King writes is very Silver Agey. Like when he looks at that transformer and he says that years ago I lived a peripatetic life as an archaeologist, always searching for answers, always finding questions. That's very Silver Age.
Yeah.
Like that's not, or that's how he wrote it in his memory, So yeah, this is the first thing from King that I've read in a long, long time, probably since Mr. Miracle, that I'm like, yeah, this guy gets it.
Yeah, this was like, I feel like any worries that any of us had, because the last chunk of Batman wasn't that great, and Heroes in Crisis, obviously had some serious problems. a couple of pages into this, because I was actually worried, because the first couple of pages, they weren't bad pages, but like it sounded like King, right? And I'm like, the last few things I've read from King weren't that hot, and it had that kind of disjointed feeling, which didn't bother me until Heroes in Crisis, and then but by the time I got like maybe a third through this book, it started to click together in a way where I got what he was doing, and it all just fit, and I'm like, this is when King's on top of his game. So I'll say it. This is King back on top form, and this, this is going to be a contender for the year. We're going to be talking about this at the end of the year.
I think that in the back of my head, there's a scare that there's just a little worry that it will nosedive. Like Heroes in Crisis, like the back half was worse, right? And there's a part of me that's worried that maybe, but I don't want to think that, because I don't think it will.
Heroes in Crisis that wasn't that great to be. I mean, it was better, but it wasn't like up to the standard or Mr. Miracle standard to begin with.
It was a little bit too ambitious for its own good, whereas here, I feel like this is the type of story that he tells.
Yeah, I feel like we're already like analyzing this issue and talking about what things means and what the art changes mean and what the character's doing. Like, we're already analyzing this to such a degree. Compare this to any other comic issue we talk about this week or last week or the week before. Mm-hmm. We are sitting here discussing what things mean in a way that's not just because they're not as clear or whatever, but because there's clear like creative like artistry going on that's implying things, or there's subtext there. This is, Tom King is a fantastic writer. I would say most of the time. It's just that he had a couple of bad things that sort of hit together.
I think when he's got the right focused story to tell, he can tell a wonderful story.
Yeah. I mean, there are parts of his Batman run that I absolutely love. Right? Like,
but as a whole 100-ish issue saga or whatever it is, like 90-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it falls flat, right?
But then, like, his Mr. Miracle, his Green Lantern Darkseid War issue is one of my favorite stories I've ever read. Like,
yeah, and
so
I still haven't read it, but from everything I've heard, his vision is kind of in the vein of
Omega
Man? Miracle or this Omega Man, which I didn't love, but I like the idea.
Yeah, so I haven't read it. I know nothing about it. I want to read it. It's very hard to find though, because he wasn't a huge name,
mm-hmm.
When he did it in the era that it came out in. However, like when it comes to stuff like this, where I know he knows what he wants to say, and the fact that they're bringing in Mr. Terrific, who is this, they keep bringing up fair, right? So if this is the story of a split person, right? Then you're bringing in the guy that believes in fair play to, break him down.
I mean, I think this story ultimately is going to be about the shades of grey of both what Adam, had to do in the war, what he lost in the war, what other people may criticize about him being in the war without understanding the weight of that pressure themselves. I think he's dealing with that, but not necessarily in a way where he's clearly in the right and everyone who's criticizing him is clearly in the wrong. That there's an element of him actually kind of processing that himself and saying, okay, here's what I'm proud of, here's what I'm not proud of. And it was different to Mr. Miracle, where Mr. Miracle was about depression. This is about something a bit more specific.
Yeah, it was about depression and fatherhood and how, how those interact. In this, though, it definitely feels like a soldier, like that's what he said, a soldier coming back and the world changing.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's about the difference that he's perceiving the world, but also in the way that the public opinion is on him as a returning soldier, and in a war that maybe a vast majority of the public don't think was right. Who knows?
Right, and so, and like again, I always tread lightly when it comes to politics and whatnot, but you could tell where King kind of sits on this, where you might disagree with the war, but you can't forget that the soldiers are still people, right?
Yeah.
And that they're fallible and they make mistakes, and we need to hold them to a standard. But what they're going through is something that us sitting here in our chairs
can't comprehend necessarily.
Can't comprehend.
You don't want to just demonize them. Go, well, they're
exactly.
I don't agree with that. They're all terrible.
Right. And then another facet that's in there as well is that I think one or two people say, whether it's the public or the interviewers, say that this is a war that was on another planet for another place. Like, this doesn't affect the world or America. Like, why do we care about this? And of course, Alana at one point says, yeah, but this enemy would eventually came right through and eventually got to Earth. And well, that's true or not is, remains to be seen.
And that's part of the mystery is he's claiming that, oh no, they must, well, he's not claiming, he's suspecting that they might be here, and that's who, killed this guy. And maybe they're here, and maybe the war's not over.
And I hear that all the time out of people that I know when it comes to certain people and whatnot. And there's this paranoia, and this is why we need a strong military. And they don't realize that the war is not like I brought up at the beginning. It's not like you see on TV. It's not Kiefer Sutherland waterboarding people and saving the day. It's all very much more complex, and to me, is you got to let the experts do their jobs, right? Like, and it's not for me to weigh in on if they're doing a good or bad job. So, and I feel like here with Alana, she's someone from Rand, so she's going to have a bias, right? Like, it's built into her that, oh no, they would have come to Earth and overrun here too. So what we did was noble and for the greater good. But again, we were only getting her side. Yeah. There's something about her I don't trust. She has a very femme fatale kind of vibe.
Well, it's interesting because I don't think I trust Adam right now either.
Yeah. I don't know. I want to trust him.
No. I think he's. I trust in the sense that I think he's genuine in what he believes, but I don't know if he necessarily is right in that sense. I don't trust that he is right in his decisions. Just a question as well. Earlier, Matt, you brought the blood splatters on the picture. Yeah. I was intrigued by that. Do you think that was okay when that picture was taken? It was there was blood on the lens, or was this a case of because we talked earlier about how Shayna's sections are these idealized representations of what happened, and then Gerard's is this is the harsh reality. Right. But is it possible that those blood splatters aren't there? This is just what he's seeing, and that is maybe this reality that we have from Gerard can't necessarily be trusted.
And that's kind of what I think, because it's also on the jetpack where it wasn't there until Alana comes into view in the reflection.
You sure? Because obviously it's on the jetpack. It's that picture. It's the same picture that's printed on there, which is why I question if it's something that was on the lens. Because you can just about make out that it is the exact same picture that he's had printed out.
Oh, it is. It is on the picture. Okay. Yeah. You're right then.
But again, I'm like, okay, is it this specific picture is triggering something in his memory, and that's why he always sees it that way? It's this regret because it's obviously this is his daughter in this picture, or is it just okay? No, this is the reality. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to trust.
Yeah, I don't know either, and that's it's doing a good job too, of that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I think the key thing is here is that some of the disjointed stuff in Batman, or in Heroes in Crisis, after a while felt like it was just like it felt like it was aimless. This feels like everything that it's leaving out is to tantalize us and make us think about what the story actually is, and make us think about the differences in the art, and think the differences in the timelines, and all these little things. Is like everything is provoking thought, and that's a big difference, I think. So. There you go. That's Strange Adventures issue 1. Matt, what are you giving the issue?
I'm gonna give this an 8.5. Real strong out the gate.
Connor?
I'm gonna go with the 9. I think I was probably leaning towards the 8.5, but actually talking about it, I like it a bit more.
Yeah, I'm going with the 9 as well. I think it's really strong, and it's very confident. It knows what it's doing. This is clearly where King's at his best, is with these types of 6, 12 issue stories where he's got this clear, defined thing. And while technically Heroes in Crisis was that, Heroes in Crisis I think suffered because it was also an event of a DC Universe sort of style. And this is a DC character, but it's personal. It's focused.
Outside of poor Roy Harper, nothing of that is really stuck.
Oh yeah, Roy's still dead.
Yeah.